So, I got this text from my dad 2 days before Christmas that literally made me throw my phone across the room. Not even kidding. It said, "Don't come for Christmas this year. We're done pretending you're part of this family. As far as we're concerned, you're dead to us." Like, dude, who says that to their kid right before Christmas? I know things have been tense with my family since my ex and I split up last year, but this was a whole new level. My parents always thought I wasn't living up to my potential or whatever, and they never approved of my relationship with Jamie, my ex. When we had our son Tyler, they barely acknowledged him for the first few years. Hey everyone, before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and ensures you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Anyway, I decided I wasn't going to let them just cut me out like that. Tyler is 7, and he was so excited about seeing his grandparents for Christmas, even though they've been total jerks to him. I didn't tell him about the text. I figured I'd just show up, and they wouldn't make a scene in front of their precious neighbors. They care way too much about what people think of them. So Christmas morning, we drove the 2 hours to their house. Tyler had wrapped these little gifts himself for everyone. He spent his own allowance on them and everything. He was bouncing in his seat the whole way there, asking if Grandma would make those cookies he likes. I almost turned around like 5 times, but I kept thinking they wouldn't actually turn away their own grandson on Christmas. I mean, who does that? We pull up, and I can see the cars of my brothers and sisters already there. My sister's BMW, my brother's Jeep, the whole family inside without us. Tyler's carrying his little bag of presents, and I grab the stuff I brought, and we walk up to the door. My mom opens it, and the look on her face, I'll never forget it. She goes, "I said no. Get off my property." Then she sees Tyler standing there, and her face gets even worse. She said, "And you brought him? How dare you?" I could hear my siblings laughing inside. I tried to explain that Tyler just wanted to see everyone for Christmas, but then my brother comes to the door and throws a beer can at me, like an actual half-full beer that splashed all over my jacket. He's yelling, "Security, we have an intruder. Someone call 911. Like it's some kind of joke. Tyler grabbed my hand, and I could feel him shaking. Then my dad shows up with a baseball bat. An actual bat. He starts going off about how I'm 29 and unemployed, and a total failure who can't even pay child support on time, which is BW. I lost my job in October and missed one payment that I made up the next month. One time. Mom starts screaming at Tyler, telling him his dad is a loser, and that's why his mom left. My uncle, Dad's brother, joined in, laughing about how I knocked up some druggie, which is such a lie. Jamie had some issues years ago before Tyler was born, but has been clean ever since. My mom grabbed the gifts we brought and threw them in the yard, stepping on some of them and yelling about how I should take this dollar store trash back and that Tyler deserves a real father, not me. Tyler started crying when my dad pointed at him and said he'd grow up to be a nobody just like me. The neighbors were out on their porches by this point. Some were recording with their phones. It was the most humiliating moment of my entire life. Dad's final words were, "Don't come back until you stop being an embarrassment. Actually, don't come back at all. You're not my son." I just smiled, took Tyler's hand and said, "You're going to regret this," and walked away. Tyler was sobbing in the car and asking what he did wrong. I had to pull over because I couldn't see straight. I was so angry. I told him he didn't do anything wrong and that Grandma and Grandpa are just mean people. The thing is, my family has always been like this. Growing up, nothing I did was ever good enough. My brother was the athletic one. My sister was the smart one, and I was just there. When I didn't get into the colleges they wanted, they made me feel like garbage. When I started dating Jamie in my early 20s, they called her trash because she didn't come from money like them. They've been looking down on me my whole life. After the divorce, things got worse. I moved into a smaller place and had to start over. They acted like I was some huge disappointment, even though I see Tyler every weekend and some weekdays. I work my ass off to provide for him, but because I'm not making 6 figures like my siblings, I'm a failure. A week later, around 11 p.m., my phone exploded. 45 desperate messages, 67 missed calls, voicemails full of crying and screaming. Turns out there's something they need from me, something only I can give them. And now they're desperate. I haven't answered a single message. I listened to one voicemail where my dad actually sounded scared. Good. Let them panic. Let them wonder. I've been saving screenshots, recording voicemails, and making a plan. They want to treat me and my son like garbage. They want to humiliate us in front of the whole neighborhood. Fine, but actions have consequences, and I'm about to make them face every single one. Update 1. So, it's been about 3 weeks since the Christmas disaster where my family humiliated me and my son in front of the whole neighborhood. Lots of you asked for an update, and holy crap, do I have one. After ignoring their calls for like a week, I finally decided to listen to some of the voicemails. My dad went from, "Call me immediately," to "Please, we need to talk," to straight up begging. My mom's messages were just as desperate, but with more guilt-tripping BS about how I'm tearing the family apart. Whatever. I was still pissed and wasn't planning to call them back. But then I got a text from my cousin Dan. We're not super close, but he's always been the only decent one in the family. He asked if we could meet up for lunch. Said there was something I should know. I was kind of suspicious, but figured Dan wouldn't be part of some ambush, so I agreed. We met at this diner near my apartment. First thing Dan does is slide an envelope across the table. Inside is a copy of my grandpa's will. I'm like, WTF? What does this have to do with anything? Then Dan tells me to read page 4, paragraph 2. Turns out my grandpa, Dad's father who died 5 years ago, left a pretty specific condition in his will. The family property, this huge lake house all of us grew up spending summers at, was put in a trust. The trust requires all grandchildren to sign off when they turn 30 before the property can be sold. I turn 30 next month. The kicker, my parents are trying to sell the lake house. They've already got a buyer lined up who's offering way above market value to tear it down and build some massive vacation complex. We're talking millions. But they need my signature, and they need it soon or the deal falls apart. That's why they suddenly need me so badly. Dan showed me the emails between my dad and the real estate agent. The buyer's deadline is February 15th. If they don't have all signatures by then, they lose the deal. After Dan left, I sat in that diner for like an hour just processing this. All those years of them treating me like garbage, telling me I'm a disappointment, humiliating me and my son, and now they need me. The golden ticket to their payday. Yeah, no. I drove to my ex Jamie's place to pick up Tyler for our weekend. While he was getting his stuff together, Jamie asked what was wrong. Apparently I looked stressed AF. I ended up telling her everything. She got so mad on my behalf, like I've never seen her that angry, not even during our worst fights when we were splitting up. Jamie suggested I talk to her brother, who works in real estate law. I was hesitant at first, because me and her family haven't exactly been close since the divorce, but she insisted. So, Monday morning, I called him. Turns out my position is even stronger than I thought. Not only do I have the right to refuse the sale, but the trust has provisions about all beneficiaries having access to the property. My parents have been changing the locks and security codes to keep me out for years, which is actually against the terms of the trust. Armed with this info, I finally called my dad back. The relief in his voice when I answered was almost funny. He started with this fake cheerful act like Christmas never happened. I let him talk for like 30 seconds before cutting him off. I told him I knew about the lake house sale. There was this long pause, and then his whole tone changed. He tried to explain how this was a family decision, and how the money would benefit everyone, and some crap about setting up college funds for the grandkids. I asked if that included Tyler, or if he was still the kid he called a MVC. That's Russian for little bastard. My dad reverts to his native language when he's really mad. Another long pause. Then he offered me money. Like straight up tried to bribe me, $50,000 cash if I signed the papers. When I didn't immediately jump at this, he went up to $75,000. I just laughed. I told him I'd think about it and hung up. Within minutes, my siblings started texting. My sister was all, "Don't be selfish." And my brother sent this long paragraph about family loyalty. That was rich coming from the guy who threw a beer can at me in front of my kid. The next day, I got a group text from my mom to all the extended family about a special family dinner this Saturday to heal our rifts. Funny how healing is suddenly important now that they need my signature, huh? I decided to go, but not to make peace. I wanted them to look me in the face. Saturday arrives, and I show up at my parents' house alone. My mom immediately asks where Tyler is, trying to act all concerned grandmother now. I told her Tyler was at a friend's birthday party, which was true, but also no way in hell was I bringing him back there after what happened. The whole family is there, parents, siblings, uncle, even some cousins. They're all acting super nice, like Christmas never happened. It was honestly creepy. My dad makes this big speech about family and forgiveness and moving forward together. Then my mom brings out this folder with the lake house sale documents, talking about how this is a wonderful opportunity for the whole family. That's when I stood up and played the recordings of their Christmas rant on my phone. The whole table went silent. Then I pulled out copies of my grandpa's will that I'd highlighted and passed them around. I pointed out the part about equal access to the property and asked why I'd been locked out for years. My dad started sputtering about misunderstandings. My uncle tried to step in, saying bygones should be bygones. I reminded him that he called my ex a druggie in front of my 7-year-old son 3 weeks ago. Then I laid out my terms, a full written apology to both me and Tyler. My fair share of the sale as defined in the will, not their lowball offer. An additional percentage for the years they've illegally kept me from using the property. A college fund for Tyler equal to what my siblings' kids are getting. My brother jumped up, knocking his chair over, calling me an extortionist. My dad told him to shut up. That's when I knew I had them. I left without signing anything, telling them to contact me when they're ready to meet my terms. As I was walking out, my mom grabbed my arm, digging her nails in, begging me not to destroy everything. I pulled away and told her she did that on Christmas, not me. It's been 4 days. The texts and calls haven't stopped. My dad's business partner even reached out trying to reason with me. Apparently, they've already spent money based on the expected sale. My sister's husband cornered me in the parking lot at the grocery store yesterday, saying I need to be reasonable. I blocked most of them, but kept the voicemails coming from my parents. Each one is more desperate than the last. Yesterday, my dad admitted they're in financial trouble and need this sale to go through. Turns out their perfect lives aren't so perfect after all. And now they need the family disappointment to bail them out. The deadline is getting closer. They're panicking, And honestly, it feels pretty damn good. I've got more plans in motion. This is just the beginning. Update 2. Hey guys, so things have escalated a lot since my last update about the lake house situation. Thanks for all the comments and support. It's honestly been helpful knowing I'm not crazy for standing my ground here. So after that family dinner where I laid out my terms, my parents kept blowing up my phone with increasingly desperate messages. I was ignoring most of them, but keeping the voicemails as evidence. Then I got this weird text from my sister at like 2 a.m. Matt, please just sign the papers. Dad's not sleeping. Mom's on anxiety meds. You don't understand what's at stake. That got me curious. What exactly was at stake beyond just missing out on one property sale? I decided to do some digging. Remember my cousin Dan who first showed me the will? I asked if he knew anything more about my parents' finances. He was hesitant at first, but eventually told me that my dad's business hasn't been doing great for a couple of years. Apparently, he took out some big loans during COVID that he's struggling to pay back. But that didn't explain the full panic mode they were in. There had to be more. So I reached out to my grandma, my mom's mom, who's always been pretty straight with me. We met for coffee, and she dropped a bombshell. My parents remortgaged their house twice in the last 3 years. They've also been borrowing money from various family members, including her, with a promise that a big deal is coming through soon. That big deal is obviously the lake house sale. But here's where it gets really interesting. While talking to Grandma, she mentioned something about Tyler's college fund that my parents supposedly set up when he was born. This was news to me. I never saw a dime of any college fund. I asked Jamie if she knew anything about this. She didn't, but she was just as confused as I was. So I called my parents' financial advisor. I still had his number from when I was in college, and they made me meet with him about student loans. I didn't expect him to tell me much, but I guess he assumed I already knew because he mentioned the trust account for Tyler without hesitation. When I played dumb and asked for details, he explained that my grandpa had set up education trusts for all his great-grandchildren before he died. Tyler's trust has over $40,000 in it. Money I never knew existed. Money that was supposed to be for my son. I hung up and immediately called Jamie's brother, the real estate lawyer, again. He confirmed that as Tyler's parent, I should have been informed about any trust in his name. The fact that my parents hid this from me for 7 years is actually illegal. I was so angry I could barely think straight. They've been holding my son's money while simultaneously calling me a deadbeat dad who can't provide for him, while I've been working 2 jobs to make ends meet, while I missed that one child support payment after losing my job, and they never let me forget it. I decided it was time to hit back harder. First, I had Jamie's brother draft a formal letter demanding immediate information about Tyler's trust account and threatening legal action if they didn't comply within 48 hours. Then, I drove to my parents' country club, the one place they care about their reputation more than anywhere else. It was Sunday brunch time when all their stuck-up friends would be there. I walked right up to their regular table where they were sitting with 2 other couples. My dad's face when he saw me, lol. He immediately stood up like he was going to escort me out before I could make a scene. I just smiled and placed 2 documents on the table. The first was a printout of the text my dad sent telling me not to come for Christmas because I was dead to them. The second was a formal legal letter about Tyler's hidden trust fund. I didn't yell or anything. I just said loud enough for the table to hear that I was still waiting for their response to my terms regarding the lake house sale, and that we now needed to discuss the money they've been hiding from my son. One of the women at the table gasped. My mom looked like she was going to pass out. My dad grabbed my arm and tried to pull me away from the table. I yanked my arm back and told him not to touch me. He hissed that we needed to talk in private. I said we had nothing to discuss until they came clean about everything. The lake house, Tyler's trust fund, and any other financial secrets they were keeping. The club manager came over, obviously trying to figure out if he needed to kick me out. My dad quickly said everything was fine, just a family matter. The look of panic on his face was priceless. He was more worried about looking bad in front of his country club buddies than actually resolving things. I left after that, but the damage was done. My phone blew up again with texts from my parents and siblings. My brother even showed up at my apartment that night, pounding on the door and yelling that I was destroying the family. I didn't answer, just recorded his meltdown through the door and called the building security. The next morning I got an email from my dad with an attached document, information about Tyler's trust fund. They were suddenly willing to transfer control of it to me. Funny how that works, but there was no mention of my other demands about the lake house. They were trying to handle these issues separately, probably hoping that giving in on the trust fund would make me back down on the bigger payday. Nice try. I didn't respond to the email. Instead, I contacted the real estate agent handling the lake house sale directly. I introduced myself as one of the property's legal owners and asked for complete documentation on the pending deal. The agent was hesitant at first, but when I mentioned potential legal issues with proceeding without full disclosure to all owners, she quickly changed her tune. Within hours, I had the complete sale contract in my inbox. That's when I discovered just how big this deal was. The buyer wasn't just some rich guy wanting a vacation home. It was a development company planning to build a luxury resort. The sale price was almost triple what my parents had implied. No wonder they were desperate. I forwarded all this info to Jamie's brother, who confirmed what I suspected. My parents had been planning to lowball me on my share, probably giving me less than half of what I was legally entitled to. Armed with this knowledge, I sent a single text to my dad. I know about the development company. I know the real sale price. Clock's ticking on your February 15th deadline. He called immediately. When I didn't answer, he sent a flurry of texts alternating between threats and pleas. The best one was, "You're going to regret this when you need our help someday." Rich coming from the guy who's now desperately needing my help. Yesterday, my mom showed up at my workplace with tears streaming down her face. She caused such a scene that my supervisor had to ask her to leave. She was sobbing about how they might lose their house, how Dad's business partners were threatening legal action over promised investments, how my siblings' kids wouldn't have college funds if this fell through. I just looked at her and said, "You should have thought about that before telling Tyler his dad was a loser and he deserved better. Before throwing our Christmas presents in the dirt. Before treating me like garbage for years." She tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back. She claimed they were just angry that day, that they didn't mean those horrible things. I laughed and asked if she thought I was stupid. This wasn't one bad day. This was years of them looking down on me, criticizing every choice I made, treating my son like he was less than their other grandkids. When she realized I wasn't budging, her tone changed completely. She hissed that I was selfish, that I'd always been difficult, that this was why Jamie left me. I just smiled and walked away. Today, I got a call from my uncle, Dad's brother, who made the comment about me knocking up a druggie. He tried to play peacemaker, saying everyone had said things they regretted, and we needed to move forward as a family. I asked if he regretted calling my son's mother a druggie in front of my 7-year-old. He stammered something about being drunk. I hung up. The deadline is in 10 days. My parents are getting more desperate by the hour. They've offered to meet all my original demands, but now I'm not sure that's enough. This was never just about the money. This is about years of being treated like the family disappointment, about them humiliating me and my son, about them hiding money that was meant for Tyler. I've scheduled a meeting with the development company for tomorrow. My parents don't know about it yet. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, but I know one thing. They're about to learn that the son they've looked down on for years holds all the cards now, and I'm done playing nice. Final update. So this past week has been absolute insanity, and I've barely had time to process everything that's gone down. First off, thanks for all your support on my previous posts. It's honestly helped me stay strong through all this BS. Remember how I mentioned I scheduled a meeting with the development company without telling my parents? Well, that meeting changed everything. I showed up at this fancy office building downtown, feeling kind of out of place in my regular clothes while everyone else was in suits. The receptionist gave me this look like, "Why are you here?" But as soon as I mentioned my name, her whole attitude changed. Turns out they were very interested in meeting me. I got taken to a conference room where 3 guys in expensive suits were waiting. The main guy, Roberts, immediately started asking if I was there representing my family. I told him nope, just myself, and that my parents didn't know I was there. The room got real quiet. Then Roberts asked what exactly I wanted. I laid it all out. How my family treated me and my son at Christmas. How they'd hidden Tyler's trust fund for years. How they were trying to lowball me on the lake house deal. I showed him the recordings of their Christmas rant and some of the threatening texts from my siblings. Instead of being put off, Roberts seemed IDK, impressed. He admitted they'd been dealing exclusively with my dad and had no idea there were internal family complications. Then he asked point blank if I was there to block the sale. That's when I dropped my bomb. I told him I wasn't against selling the property at all. I just wanted to deal directly with them instead of through my parents. Roberts explained that the property was perfect for their plans, but they needed all signatures by the deadline or they'd have to move on to their backup location. Then he asked what it would take to get my signature. I didn't ask for more money. Instead, I made 3 demands. My share would be paid directly to me, not through my parents. They would include a small memorial area in their development honoring my grandfather whose property it was. They would rename the resort from the Heights Resort to the Tyler Heights Resort after my son. Roberts was quiet for a minute, then started laughing. He said in 20 years of development, he'd never had someone ask for naming rights instead of more money. He seemed to respect that. After some back and forth, we came to an agreement. They'd meet all my demands, plus give me a small percentage ownership stake in the final development. Roberts had their legal team draft new paperwork on the spot. I signed a preliminary agreement before leaving. As I was walking out, Roberts shook my hand and said something like, "Your family really underestimated you, didn't they?" That felt good. On the drive home, my phone kept buzzing. My dad had somehow found out about the meeting, probably from someone at the development company. His texts went from confused to panicked to furious. The best part? I didn't respond to any of them. The next morning, I got an email from the development company confirming our agreement and stating they'd informed my parents of the changes. An hour later, my dad showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door. I opened it, and he tried to push his way in. I blocked the doorway and told him he wasn't welcome inside. He was red-faced, literally shaking, saying I had no right to go behind their backs, that I was stealing from the family, that this proved I'd always been selfish. I just laughed and asked if he was done. That made him even angrier. He started yelling about how they'd raised me, paid for my education. They didn't. I had loans, given me everything. I reminded him that 2 months ago, he told me I wasn't his son anymore, so he couldn't have it both ways. He tried a different approach then, saying my mom was devastated, that she might need to be hospitalized from the stress. I asked if she was too stressed to remember calling my son a Mervek at Christmas. That shut him up for a second. Then he tried threats. They'd contest the deal. Sue me. Tell everyone what an ungrateful son I was. I just held up my phone and reminded him I had recordings of everything they'd said and done. Did he really want a judge to hear how they treated their grandson? Finally, he tried bribing me again, offering to split their share with me if I'd tear up the new agreement. Too little, too late. Before he left, he got in my face and said something that actually explained a lot. You've always been just like your mother's brother, stubborn, difficult, thinking you're better than everyone. Then he stormed off. My uncle, Mom's brother, killed himself when I was little. My family never talked about him, but I'd heard whispers that he had struggled with depression and addiction. Apparently, my dad had been comparing me to him my whole life. Suddenly, so much made sense. Why they were always waiting for me to fail. Why they never trusted my decisions. Why they treated me differently than my siblings. They saw me as a time bomb just waiting to explode like my uncle. That realization didn't make me forgive them, but it helped me understand the twisted logic behind how they treated me all these years. The next day, I got a group text from my mom announcing an emergency family meeting at their house that evening. She said attendance was mandatory for all family members, including extended family. I almost ignored it, but decided to go one last time to face them all. I showed up deliberately late. The living room was packed. My parents, siblings, and their spouses, my grandma, some aunts and uncles, even a few cousins, including Dan. Everyone got quiet when I walked in. My dad started with his speech about family unity and how important it was to present a united front in business dealings. He made it sound like I'd betrayed some sacred family trust by meeting with the developers alone. Several relatives were nodding along. Then my mom took over, crying about how this situation was destroying our family and how they'd always wanted what was best for me, but I'd consistently made choices that hurt myself and others. Classic manipulation. My sister jumped in next, talking about how her kids needed their college funds that were depending on this sale. My brother mentioned the vacation home he'd been planning to buy with his share. I sat there listening to all of it, not saying a word. Finally, my dad turned to me and asked what I had to say for myself. I stood up, connected my phone to their TV using Qcast, and played the video from Christmas. All of it. Their cruel words, the beer can throwing, the baseball bat, them humiliating my son, the neighbors watching. The room went completely silent. Then I played clips of the voicemails and showed screenshots of the texts they'd sent after. Not the desperate ones, but the threatening, manipulative ones. I showed documentation of Tyler's trust fund they'd hidden from me for years. By the time I was done, several relatives were looking at my parents in shock. My grandma was openly crying. Even my siblings looked uncomfortable. I told everyone that I wasn't blocking the sale. It was still happening. I explained the deal I'd made with the developers, including the memorial for Grandpa and naming the resort after Tyler. I pointed out that everyone would still get their share. I hadn't taken money from anyone else. Then I looked directly at my parents and said that this was never about the money for me. It was about them finally facing consequences for how they've treated me and my son. It was about them learning that they couldn't just discard people and then expect favors when they needed something. My dad tried to interrupt, but my grandma actually shushed him. That had never happened before. I finished by saying I didn't expect apologies because I knew they wouldn't be sincere. Instead, I had 2 announcements. First, I was taking full control of Tyler's trust fund, and any future communications about my son would go through me, not them. Second, once the sale went through, I would be using part of my share to start a small foundation in my uncle's name, Mom's brother they never talked about, focused on mental health support for young adults. That last part hit my mom hard. She actually gasped and had to sit down. I left without waiting for their response. As I was walking out, my cousin Dan and a couple of others followed me. They said they had no idea things had been so bad between us or what had happened at Christmas. Dan actually apologized for not standing up for me sooner. The sale went through 3 days ago. The money has been transferred directly to my account as agreed. The developers sent Tyler a little model of what the resort will look like with his name on it. He thinks it's the coolest thing ever. My parents have been eerily quiet since the family meeting. My siblings have sent a few tentative texts, suddenly acting like they want to repair our relationship now that they've got their money. Too late for that. Jamie and I took Tyler to a theme park this weekend to celebrate. It was the first time in months I've seen him laugh without that worried look in his eyes. That night, he asked if we could visit Grandma and Grandpa soon. I had to explain that probably wouldn't happen for a very long time, if ever. He thought about it for a minute, then said, "That's okay. They weren't very nice anyway. Kids understand more than we give them credit for." The foundation paperwork is being processed now. I've already had several relatives from my mom's side reach out wanting to contribute or get involved. Turns out lots of people remembered my uncle, but no one ever talked about him because my parents basically erased him from family history. As for my parents, I heard through Dan that they're selling their house, the one they remortgaged twice. Downsizing, they're calling it. The country club membership is gone too. Actions have consequences. I don't know if I'll ever speak to them again. Part of me is still angry, but mostly I just feel free. Free from seeking their approval. Free from being the family disappointment. The resort will break ground next month. Tyler and I will be there for the ceremony. My parents won't be invited. Sometimes the best revenge isn't some elaborate scheme. Sometimes it's just finally standing up for yourself, taking control, and watching as others face the consequences of their own actions. That Christmas text telling me I was dead to them, best gift they ever gave me. It finally showed me exactly who they were and gave me the push I needed to stop letting them define who I am.